Welcome to School Zone. My name is Amie Tregaskes, and we are going to be discussing today transportation. There's been some transportation issues, and I have invited Mr. Shad Housley, the superintendent from the Xolos School District, and the Director of Transportation and Facilities, Sean West. Thank you for being here today.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
This is your first time on the show, Sean. We're glad to have you.
Thanks.
Let me have you tell a little bit about your background. I know that you've just recently come to Xolos.
Correct. I came here from the Prescott Unified School District. I worked there as the Director of Facilities and Transportation for 4 years. Before that, I was a bus driver. And before that, I worked in law enforcement for about 10 years, and I was a firefighter for about 11 years. So needed a change, so I became a transportation guru and director.
Well, we're glad to have you. I know that Mr. Housley and I had been at some board meetings, not board meetings, something for the school board down in the valley, and all of the vendors knew you and were like, how did you get Sean? So we're glad to have you with us today.
Great. I'm glad to be here.
So recently there's been some changes with the busing, and the community has been a little concerned. So I thought I'd bring you on. Why don't you give us some, maybe Mr. Housley, you could give us some history, since Sean wasn't here last year, of how busing worked last year, the change in times, and the need for a change in busing.
Well, I think that to bring perspective a little bit is, as I came on about a year and a half ago now, that one of my tasks was to look at the structures and the way, the organizational piece of the school district. One of those areas where we needed to review was transportation and how we were delivering our kids to and from home, the safety value of that, and how efficient were those routes that we had. It appeared at first glance, at least, that our routing versus our school start times were a little off kilter and a little out of balance. And so as we made decisions to move to a more common start time, it became apparent that we needed to make some changes to transportation, which we did at the beginning of this school year. And we put those changes into place, and felt like we had something that worked okay, but we knew that we weren't completely satisfied with the way that it was. It still lacked regional busing options. It still lacked in our times. It still lacked. We were running a lot of double bus routes. Some inconsistencies still. So as Sean came on board, one of his first tasks was to look at those inconsistencies, to find better solutions, and I think that's what is the result of what we're currently experiencing. I just like to remind everyone that at the beginning of every school year, and regardless of whether changes happened or not in December, we always experience transportation type questions or issues at those two junctures because of the long break away from school. So
this last year we didn't have just the regular transportation. We also had a common start time, I think, which compounded transportation issues at the same time back in August. How long did it take to work things out, though, in August?
It took about 3 weeks before we really saw things settle out, and we're working with children. You have scheduling pieces, you have children just trying to learn where they go. Once they learn, they're pretty locked in, and that's not an issue anymore. But that usually takes at least a week. 2 weeks is probably more average.
Did it take longer this year compared to the time it took last year? Or is it always the same?
Pretty similar in time frames at the beginning of the year, and I think that's what we're experiencing now. It's a pretty similar turnaround. We're about 7 days into our new routes and continuing to fine-tune and adjust, and I think what we'll see at the end of this week and moving into the first of next week, that things really balance out, and I think everyone will feel more confident and comfortable with the changes that were made.
Okay, so before I move to Mr. West, I want to have you tell just really quick, what are some of the academic reasons for a common start time? Why did we make that change? Just to remind everybody.
Well, to make that change, it allowed for us to build in consistency in the amount of time that we were able to deliver instruction, meeting the state requirements, but also being able to build in the things that are needed. There's a need for things like recess. There's the need for things like reteach and enrichment to happen during the school day. There's a need for the basic instruction in the core curriculum. And we've built out that common start time to allow those things to happen inside the school day. And so, with the exception of high school, which offers a reteach before school starts, everyone else offers that during the school day, and I think it's beneficial for kids to have that.
And your data, we can do a whole nother show on that, is showing success there too.
Certainly, we're very pleased with the response to academics and growth in our students in just this first semester, and we feel like those changes were at least one of the components that helped to have that growth be shown.
That's great. Okay, so I'm going to move to you, Sean. Why don't you tell me a little bit about why the changes right now and what types of changes that happened?
Sure. So, basically when I came on board, I was just going to evaluate and observe and make changes,
Like
May,
next
June.
year or something, right?
And, the first week that I was in the office, one of the first things was the discussions of student management and suspending students. I mean, we were suspending kindergartners off the bus because they were playing with their Matchbox cars in the bus. So I started looking at why are we suspending students off of a school bus for talking, for playing with their toys, etc. Because I was already under the impression that we still haul K through 12. We've been doing that. I don't know for how many years, but it's been done here. Mm-hmm. There was no student management, so I started looking into why that was the case. And what I found is our AM drivers were one person, our PM drivers were a second person. So there was no consistency with adults. So basically, when you take a student and you put them in a classroom who has a set teacher every day, there's set expectations that teacher has. When a sub teacher comes on board, they still try to do what the teacher asks, but they don't know who the students are. So if you have two separate drivers, one who's hauling 60 students in the morning as his classroom, and then you have another one hauling 60 students in the afternoon, who do they listen to? One is always softer than the other. One has no leniency. One has nothing but leniency. So that was creating a huge problem. And it was also causing a division within the department because drivers are starting to argue with each other because, well, I gave this student a ticket. Well, I didn't give him a ticket. And then the structure for discipline is unrealistic. Like the first ticket's a warning. Your second ticket was an automatic 3-day suspension from the school bus. A third ticket, et cetera, to 11 days off the bus, to 30 days off the bus. And nothing in the system was fair. So I started looking at the routes and why do we have this bus driver picking up in the morning but this bus driver in the afternoon? And it was just the way that the routes were created. Historically, it was the district wanted this to happen, so this is what we came up with. There was no thought process. It was just, we're just going to throw kids on a bus, and however the cars landed, they landed, and that's how it worked. To me, that's not a model that works for me. My own personal children go to school here in Xolo, and they ride those buses. And they have different bus drivers, and they are coming home. I have a high school son who would call me and say, what route am I supposed to ride? Well, I don't know. I didn't know the bus numbers, and if I can't explain it to my own family, I couldn't explain that to the community either. So we made the changes now so that they all have the same bus driver in the morning and in the afternoon.
Okay.
And then we went away from the bus numbers. That was another big piece is if you rode on bus 44, that was your route number. Well, the issue with that is if bus 44 breaks down and now bus 25 is the bus that's going to pick up the students, they're looking for bus 44. And that caused even more confusion with the elementary kids specifically because they didn't know where to go.
Not that we have a lot of buses breaking down, but we do, right?
We do.
Yeah.
We have buses break down all the time. As a matter of fact, before I came in this afternoon, One of our special needs buses was broke down. The wheelchair ramp wouldn't go down. They were able to manually put it down, but then they couldn't get it to go up. So we had to go get another special needs bus from our yard to go and rescue
The
those
first one.
students so that that bus can get on the street.
Wow. Okay. So you've addressed common bus driver and the route number, and then we're doing a common start time. So no double routes.
No, we don't have a double route. Double routes aren't very effective
Okay.
or efficient.
But that's what we had been told a few years ago. We had been told that we needed to have double routes. So now we don't need double routes. Why is that? How can we do all this with just one route?
Well, it's because that's the number of routes that we have. Now, if we had 30 buses, you could do double routes. You could do a K through 5 on one bus and a 6 through 12 on a second bus. But Xolo does not have those resources.
How many buses do we have?
We have 15 on a route, 14 that are currently on a route, plus 2 special needs, which gives
Okay.
us 3 spare buses, 1 special needs spare, and 2 of the 40-foot regular route buses for
Okay.
spares.
Okay. That's great, though. I'm glad we've got that. Now, I know that our fleet is rather old. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. The Xolos Fleet, as far as it's also what I call a hodgepodge. It's different makes and models of buses. So we have a handful of Thomas-made buses, which are good buses, and we also have another manufacturer, International buses. The International buses, a lot of them we bought used, so they haven't been maintained the best that they could be. So they're starting to have a lot of them. They have 250,000 miles on them, which, for a truck or a semi, that's fine. But for a school bus that stops and starts constantly, it's not good. Our buses that we have outlived
Their
the
life.
expectation. The life expectancy from the manufacturers.
So what's the advantage of having all similar buses? Is it just because the maintenance on the buses is different?
It has been. I mean, as the years go on, most all manufacturers now have the same bus engine
Okay.
and the same transmission, but the inside bus parts are still different. And then each manufacturer builds different trinkets or whatever that make their bus. So it's not necessarily it's a disadvantage to have that, but when you have the age of our fleet with different manufacturers, we don't have the support for some of the stuff that we need. So with the age of some of our fleet, if something breaks on it, they may not carry a part for that anymore.
Okay. What is the age of our fleet?
I don't honestly remember the oldest bus we have, I think, is maybe a 2000, maybe 1999.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly. But our newest bus is a 2014.
Okay. We just got that one last year or something. Is that right?
It was pretty recent, and that's been a blessing with the bond being passed. Is we were in the board meeting on Thursday night, as you know, you approved the purchase of 10 new buses with bond proceeds, and we really look forward to those being on the road by the start of next school year.
Why
What
so
is it?
long?
It takes 6 months to manufacture a bus. They got to build them from the ground up and meet all the specifications. I wish we could go down to a car lot and purchase one
Right.
like we would a regular family vehicle, but we can't. Sure would make for a better turnaround, but what these new buses will do for us is, for instance, the age of our fleet causes breakdowns. With 3 spares, there are times where we're tapped into our spares, and if another one breaks down,
We're out.
we're out. And so having a fleet that is newer in age will eliminate some of that. Obviously, you never eliminate all need for service on buses, but at least we could limit that to a minor scale.
So we'll trade in our oldest buses.
Yeah, there's a list that was come up with of 10 buses that we're going to trade in. That'll be the ones that have the highest mileage, the ones that break down more often.
Okay.
And so we'll trade those in, and then, like Mr. Housey said, we're hoping to have our new buses in by the first day of school,
Yay.
which would be really nice. I know the mechanic's excited about that.
Yeah.
Just for an example, every day that I go into my office, there's at least 2 buses in there One is in there for preventive maintenance, and one is always in there for service.
So one of the things that I see that creates havoc for the community is anything that changes, that affects the home structure. You know, start times, for instance, when school changes the start times, but not necessarily the stuff that occurs within the school window, but the start times or busing. What are some of the things that you've done to help alleviate or try and make it easier for families to know that we're making a change with buses and this is what the change is? What are some ways you've communicated that?
Sure. First thing we do is I always write out a letter, and on that letter should be included a route page, and those go home with the students.
Okay.
You know, because most of them have backpacks, and, you know, just like a school would give out paperwork to send home, we send out a letter to the parents through the student. We use the district's communication piece, which is we call it for robocalls, you know, where it contacts the parents via their cell phone, their home phone, it text messages them, as well as emails them. That's through our Power School system that we have set up. We communicate them through that way. We communicate with the web. So the district has a website that we put all of our route changes and schedules on to that. But the biggest piece I would say is the letters that we send home with the students and the communication blast through the district's robocall system.
So did you send home a letter before the break?
We
or
did.
did you just, okay.
Yeah, we sent a letter home on that Friday of the break. So December 22nd, we sent a letter home. And then
that went home to all the kids or just the ones on the bus?
Just ones that are on the bus, because we
Okay.
don't really have access to the rest of the students
Okay.
unless they're on the bus. And then from that piece, our IT department sent out a phone blast to all.
I know that we
of the
got that
district.
one the Friday before we came back from
Correct.
break. And we got it on our home phone, on my cell phone, my husband's cell phone, his work phone, email, and text. We all got
Right.
text too. So yeah, I know it went out a lot of ways. But if you missed it, why would that be?
There's a setting in the Power School. So when our students are registered, there's packets that the parents fill out. And I know, because I have to fill out 5 of them with each one of my children.
I got a stamp for my name.
And there's in there, it asks you what your phone number is, what's your email, what your cell phone number.
So if any of that changed, that could have been part of the problem.
It could have been part of it, and then,
Okay.
and to fix that, they can contact the school that their students attend and say, hey, can I have my information updated?
Okay.
Or they can even contact the district's IT department, who can walk them through the actual website itself to change it themselves.
Okay, that's awesome. That's great. Okay, so how efficient are these routes now?
Last week it was a little rough, but by Friday, we were leaving the high school at 1:16 p.m., which I know school gets out there at 12:45. So we start at Nicholas Homestead and we go to Whipple Ranch and then to the high school and junior high. So we left Nicholas Elementary about 5 to 8 minutes after the bell rang, and they were on the street to the high school and out of the high school by 1:16. Today, as I was going by the high school at 3:15, the last buses were leaving, and they started at Nicholas Elementary at 2:45. So
That's
they
great.
have gone from being over an hour in time to we're clearing the last school within 30 minutes or so.
And then the furthest route, how long is it? Like, let's say it's Clay Springs?
Clay
or-
Springs are our farthest route out.
Okay, so if a student left the school at 1:15, when would they be getting to Clay Springs?
I can kind of cheat. I don't have the Friday schedule, but I could tell you what it should be like today. So
Okay,
if that bus left the high school exactly when it was supposed to leave the high school, it would have reached Clay Springs at 3:45, and then its last stop would be in Timberline Acres, which would be at 4:15.
so an hour would be the last stop, right?
Yeah,
The last stop.
the last stop, and they are the farthest ones out, and these buses are full.
Okay.
So
And how is ridership?
Ridership has increased, actually, believe it or not, since the route changes have been made. We're still going through hiccups, and we're still trying to make our routes even more efficient than they currently are. But as of last night, our route numbers are starting to get to where we're almost at capacity on the buses, just because a lot of our parents recognize that we are trying to be more efficient, and we have a zero tolerance policy with the students. Our kindergartners are in the front of the bus. Our high school students are in the back of the bus. A lot of our drivers, they have assigned seats. We have boys on one side, girls on the other side. Each driver has their own technique of how they assign their children to a seat. But we're getting more phone calls asking about our routes, and parents telling us,
Hey, I want to ride the
my
bus
kids
now.
to start riding the bus more.
That's exciting.
It's exciting, and it's kind of scary at the same time. It's kind of a happy medium. It's we want our students on the buses because it is the safest mode of transportation in the city. But at the same time, we don't have any more routes to create at this point because
We
of
don't
our
have extra buses.
or staff. We
yeah.
have a bus driver shortage here. We don't know why we can't get bus drivers to work in the community, but we really need more bus drivers.
Who wouldn't want to come work for this guy?
So, and the hours are great. You have a split shift. You have holidays off. You have your summer vacations. It's a great job to have, especially for retired individuals. A lot of our stay-at-home moms or dads, they want something to do, and while their children are in school, they have the ability to, take them there and bring them back and do field trips. And but we need more bus drivers.
Good plug. Good plug.
There, thanks.
You were going to say something, Mr. Housley.
I just was going to point out that today, with the buses leaving at 3:15, leaving the high school, under our old model, just one little efficiency, we were leaving at 3:20 all of last semester. So while Sean and his department continue to refine and make sure that those routes are as efficient as possible, I think we'll continue to see those efficiencies on both sides when they're being delivered and dropped off, and also when we're leaving the school. But I'm pleased to know that we're moving in that direction.
A positive direction.
Yeah.
What about pickup times? When are you picking up kids in the morning? Like, how early is that?
It really varies by where they live.
Okay. So what's the earliest?
I would say
Is it
Clay
Clay
Springs is the earliest, and it's at 6:17 is the
Okay.
earliest stop there. It used to be well earlier than that in the old structure. But, 6:10, 6:15, that's kind of the earliest stops right now. And then 4 o'clock is about the latest. 4:15 is the latest drop-off time. And it is going to be out in Clay Springs and Linden.
Why is that?
Just because the distance from the school district. Not
Okay.
from the school district itself, but from the schools.
Okay.
If we just did, just for information as well, as we just purchased a routing software. All of these routes have now been uploaded to that program, as well as they have access to PowerSchool to kind of give them a general idea where our students live.
To try and help make things more efficient?
More efficient,
Okay.
and it would be nice. We talked earlier about having a K through 5 and a 6 through 12, and how we can't do that right now. That would be an ideal goal, to
Okay.
have that piece, having a K through 5 and a 6 through 12. And that routing software will hopefully help us with that, but that won't happen until the next school year.
Okay. So this is, aside from minor adjustments, we're not going to come back from spring break and see all new routes?
No.
Okay.
Now, this is a one-time thing. I'm not a fan of changing routes in the middle of a school year, but with the issues that we had on our buses, with the driver inconsistencies, the student management problems, which we have not had as much of yet, with these new routes, we haven't had a huge influx of student management problems. We won't see this kind of a change again. Even when we come back in the next school year, I don't anticipate to have a whole bunch of changes made unless we have the ability to go
do
to
the
that K
K
through
through
5, 6
okay.
through 12.
That's exciting, though. And it's exciting that we're got new buses on the way. So thanks to the community for that.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything else to add, Shad?
Changes in busing, changes in any structure, as you said, it's important for us to remember how it affects families and how it affects that, and we're very sensitive to that. Our number one priority is to make sure that our routes are safe and that our kids are delivered to and from school in that same manner. We love our children. We want them to be successful. We've experienced a little bit of a hiccup along the way, but I hope the community knows that we're committed to the task of helping our kids be successful, and the changes that we're making are well thought through. And I think as we see the weeks come, over the next couple of days, we'll see the transportation issues level out, and I think we will be happy with the results that we see.
I must say that increasing the numbers on your buses also says a lot towards increasing the trust that families have in the school district to provide that transportation. So I know it's been a hot topic lately, and I appreciate you both for joining us. Thank you for joining us today on School Zone, and we'll see you next time.